how well is the translator doing? This is also an important question. But let's see. So, what book is this? What kind of book is this? It looks like comparative law. Why? Because Ibn Rushd was trained when he was younger as a Malik. And then here he's giving you opinions of all the schools. He has this idea that the Hanbali school is not the real school. So there are three main schools, the Hanafi, the Maliki, and Shafi'i. Hanafis in the east, Malikis in the west, and occasionally there are Shafi'is in the west too. Shafi'is are scattered. Shafi'i died in Egypt. He's Palestinian originally from Asqalan, but he settled in Cairo. And is his school a continuation of the Maliki school? Also, some people think that, not Shamsi, of course, not the modern thinkers who follow Shacht and think that Shafi'i is the real jurist, is the one who actually built a system that combines reason and tradition. But anyway, so this is comparative law. Now, Rushd is a very interesting kind of judge and jurist, because the people who hate Islamic law say he outgrew it. Because towards the end of his life, he's basically doing physics and metaphysics. He's not interested in this kind of thing. But this book shows the kind of law that he's interested in. He also wrote about legal theory. Okay, in the Intro to Islamic Law, we said there are at least two levels. There are multiple levels, but you could have principles, we could have doctrines, but then you have case law. And sometimes they clarify each other, sometimes they complicate each other. In a book like this, it's doctrines and disagreements. This is technically a book in juristic disagreement, meaning they'll show you what they say and why they disagree. And it vacillates also, as you learned in the Intro to Islamic Law, it's either qiyas or khabar. But khabar is this kind of broad term that summarizes tradition. Because the Quran and the Sunnah go together. It's something that we heard. So for example, we heard from the Prophet, or we heard from the companions, because we trust them, because these are the only people who will tell us, or the Prophet, that when you, in that question, what was the, I forgot, if someone killed my father, according to Islamic law, if you remember, do I have the right to tell the killer, go away? Yes, right? How about if his kids, my father, some are adults and some are not? Do we wait for the kids to become adults? That's the matter of disagreement. So people will say, yes, we should wait. I mean, of course, if you're not eager to apply capital punishment, because if all the adults say kill, and the judge wants to wait because maybe by the time the kids become adults, the opinion will be, let's not kill. This is actually always true. Once the blood is cold, people don't want to kill. They usually want compensation. There's always a question of time. And I may have mentioned that the Iranian system, the modern Iranian system, took advantage of this completely. All you need to do to get forgiveness is give the victim and the victim's family time. So they administer it. And of course, the modern state, because the modern state is all about protraction, giving, taking a lot of time to do anything. So it works. I mean, if the American system allowed forgiveness, it would have more forgiveness than any system, because it takes forever to get to capital punishment, about 10, 11 years, something like that. So if I wait for the kids, if I wait for the babies to become adults, then I'm pretty much assured that will happen. Let's jump to page, I'll go back to the doctrines and I'll tell you, but let's go to 486. And it is 56.1.1.2. 56 is the chapter, and then the sections are 112. This question is a question that was given to his father. I'm starting with case law to see how, and his grandfather was in the minority. His grandfather wanted to wait. Okay, let's read it and see what we think after reading it. Gulistan, why don't go ahead? So they agreed.
They agreed that the already Adam is entitled to one of the two things, possess or either in return for dia or without it. They disagreed whether the conversion of possess into Adam by acquiring dia is the exclusive right of the heirs of the victim, without there being an option for the person subjected to possess, or whether the liability for dia is not established without the consent of both parties.
Very good. Yeah. What if the one, this is an initial disagreement. This we're not yet in our question. But what if, okay, so I killed that guy. They say, okay, I don't want to kill you, but you owe me $1 million. And then I say, no, I'm not going to pay $1 million. You have to kill me. Because I'd rather that my kids not lose their money. So this is the question. Does the perpetrator have to consent to the deal or not? Or then, you don't agree, well, like anybody who owes debt, I don't agree to pay, but you have to pay. So this is the first question. So let's actually, I wanted to jump that. Oh no, it's the next question right away. Yeah. So they disagreed whether the conversion of qisas into pardon by acquiring diya. Yeah, okay. Then, okay, what's the next paragraph? Next sentence.
Malik said that the heir has no right to adopt a diya unless the offender consents to pay the diya.
Yeah, here actually they are at a loss because there is no clear evidence either way. So Malik says that the heir has no right to pardon for diya unless the offender consents to pay the diya. This is a narration of Ibn al-Qasim. Ibn al-Qasim is an Egyptian guy who studied with Malik. So this is not a companion. This is a guy named Abdurrahman al-Qasim who studied with Malik. And the earliest source of Islam, of Maliki fiqh is a book by a guy named Sahnoun, who came from Morocco and studied with the Egyptian guy because Malik was dead by then. And would ask him, what did Malik say about this? Occasionally, Ibn al-Qasim says, I don't know. And most of the time he says, I know he says this. And sometimes he says, well, I don't know what he said in this particular one, but in a similar issue, he said this. So I would guess he'd say this. That's how the Mudawwana comes into being. Mudawwana Kubra, that's the first real source of Islamic law. Yes, of Maliki law. It's true that Malik had a book of reports called the Muwatta. You heard about Muwatta? The Muwatta is a book of reports from the Prophet, but it is one volume. But this Mudawwana is the one that has the questions. It has about 20 or 25,000 questions. 20,000, 25,000. But okay, well, I want to jump to the heir thing. So now, whether the consent is important or not, okay, let's jump to the next paragraph. But because I want to go back to the beginning, Malik's reliance for his well-known opinion. Go ahead. Pardon meaning I'm not going to kill, and I want diya. I want money.
A part of the diya is just.
What is the explanation? What are you
Malik says that the heir has no right to pardon for diya unless the offender. So they can't ask for diya unless the offender consents to pay it.
So the first question, yes, was let me actually get to the Arabic here to see if this translation is confusing. I can read it and translate. So we are, right, in Arabic it would be different. It's right before he mentions his grandson. It's 4 volumes. In the Arabic edition, it's not that overwhelming. It's about 1600 maybe, but it is a summary. I mean, it's not there. The commentaries are usually longer. You can go on like this one commentary. It's about 6 or 7 volumes. It can be. Okay, so let me read from the English thing. They agreed that the blood owner, that is the heir, has one of 2 options: retaliation or forgiveness. The forgiveness of one of 2 kinds, either forgiveness without any money and forgiveness with money. Al-afu inna ala diya, that's the one you're asking about, right? Yeah. So the pardon can be free. I want nothing. I don't want retaliation and I don't want money. But you can say, I don't want retaliation, but I want money. Is that your question?
Yeah.
Then we go on. Then they disagreed. But moving from retaliation to forgiveness, is that a right that is exclusive to the one who owns the blood, meaning the heir, without any choice for the perpetrator, or not? It won't be, or that it would be that the diya has to come because both agree, because the one who pays also has to agree. That both the one who has to pay and the one who is collecting. وأنه إذا لم يرد المقتص منه أن يؤدي دية لم يكن لولي الدم إلا القصاص مطلقا. So if in that case, if we say that they have to both consent, then I am the one who wants the money. I say, you killed my father, So I need money. They say, no, I'm not paying. Then the only option I have is retaliation. I can go back to retaliation because he said no to the money. That's what he's saying. Okay. Or forgiveness, right? So I have only two of the three options because he said I'm not paying. فقال Malik said, no, the wali, the one, the heir, gets only to seek retaliation or forgiveness without any money, unless the other one agrees to pay, right? So he says that the consent has to be both. And this is what Ibn al-Qasim said. وهي رواية أبو القاسم. It's also the opinion of Abu Hanifa, Thawri, and Awza'i, and a group, he says, unknown group. Shafi'i, Ahmad, Abu Thur, Dawood, and the majority of the scholars of Medina, Medina is where the Prophet is buried, of the students of Malik, they said no, the heir has the choice. He can either retaliate or get the money, whether or not the killer agrees. So his consent is not required. And that is attributed to Malik by Ashab. So the problem is we don't know exactly what Malik said. He said both opinions, which opens the door for Ibn Rushd's grandfather to also, who is also Ibn Rushd, by the way. So the grandfather is also known as Ibn Rushd. So the older one is known as Ibn Rushd, the grandfather, and ours, the philosopher, is known as Ibn Rushd al-Hafid, or Ibn Rushd, the grandson. Okay, but he says, okay, Ashab narrated that from Malik, but what is more commonly reported is the first one. So it's most likely that Ibn Qasim got it right, that Malik really requires that consent. Okay, on that famous view, or the more commonly reported, what does he rely on? Malik relies on Anas ibn Malik, which is in a story actually that has to do with retaliation here, in a tooth, not in a life. The Prophet said, God's book, God's revelation demands the qisas, demands retaliation. So then it was known that by the dalil al-khitab. What's dalil al-khitab? If you say, I'm going to go to school on Tuesday, you understand that I'm not going Wednesday, that I'm not going Thursday. So it's understood, it's implied that only retaliation here is acceptable. That's based on the book of God, right? Which means what? That the other ones are not by kitab. The other ones are other evidence, maybe hadith or something like that. The second group, they say Abu Huraira narrated, whoever has a victim, someone was killed for him, meaning in his family, he has two choices, either to take the diya or to forgive. Now, both of these hadiths are accepted, but the first one is weak in its indication that there's only qisas. And the second one is explicit that the option is there, and that combining them, and to combine the two hadiths is possible if we got out of this dalil khitab thing. Dalil khitab is also not that certain, right? So if I say I'm going to school Tuesday, your inference that I'm not going Monday or Wednesday is incomplete, right? It's possible, but it is not 100%. So the first hadith then would be neutralized because it can be reconciled with the second. So if we can reconcile, then we will do it, and that would be even required or expected. We should do that. Therefore, we go to the second one, and the majority say that to reconcile the two is necessary, and it is better than doing tarjih. So what's page are you in now? I have. Right? Okay. So to reconcile is better than to determine that one of them is better than the other. Tarjih. How does he translate tarjih? You lost the sentence, or?
No, I didn't the sentence, but if I understand tarjih, then it's an option that he said it really doesn't.
Well, the sentence says, their reconciliation is possible if the interpretation of the first text is avoided. Since reconciliation is necessary and is possible, it is possible then the adoption of the second tradition is inevitable, and the majority maintains that reconciliation is obligatory. when it is possible and it's better than performance of one over the other.
Right. So it's inevitable, and the majority maintain that reconciliation is obligatory when it is possible, and it's better than preference. That's how we translate tarjih. Preference is to put one above the other. So you have two hadiths. There are only four options when two hadiths are clashing. One is to reconcile. You say, oh, they're not really saying the same thing. One is to say one abrogates the other. We can decide the timing. One is to say that one is stronger than the other, so we check one. If they're really equal in every respect, we drop both. That is when they're really, really equal in every respect, and we can just never decide which one is better, look for another evidence. You understand? These are the four options: either abrogation or reconciling, meaning accepting both, or accepting one and not the other. So the abrogation accepts one and not the other based on timing. The subsequent abrogates the earlier. The third one is accept one because it's stronger. Like we look at the chain of narrators, one is stronger, or the content of it is strong. So it could be based on the source or based on the content, source being the chain. Or if they're really, really just, it's a total deadlock, then a drop both. That shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen frequently anyway, but it is a possibility. So now tarjih, which is to say that one is better than the other, that's what he translates quickly as preference. He says of one over the other. That is inferior as a choice compared to reconciliation. If you can reconcile the two, assuming that both have been said in different occasions, we'll see why can't you reconcile? Because you're overreading the first one. The Dalil Khitab is an overreading. When I say I'm going to school Tuesday, you're overreading when you say only Tuesday. So when the Prophet says God's scripture is qisas, he's not saying necessarily that other options are never acceptable. He's saying maybe that this is the main one. So, by the way, both of them in my mind are not indicative at all that the consent is or isn't required. I think they're both silent. This is one thing I always find in the use of hadith. People overuse hadith. When the second one says that he has a choice, that is talking about the victim's heir. But it is not saying whether if the perpetrator says, no, I'm not paying, it's not saying what we do. This is in fact the question of ijtihad. The hadith, both hadiths in my mind, now this is me not in the are silent. And the consent question is open. What is reasonable, you think? Should we require, if I'm imposing $1 million on someone who killed, whether inadvertently or intentionally, should I require that they accept that? Or this is basically like punishment. So punishment, you don't get a choice. Don't look at each other. Look inside. What would you do? You're the judge. So one thing actually about reading some law like this all the time, you have to make the law. And of course, don't forget what you do now, because in a few pages, when you make a law that looks against what, then you'll remember. So that's how you build the method, is you have to answer not 10, not 15, thousands of questions, right? So what is really reasonable? I mean, let me see how you think as jurists, if you can. We didn't get yet to the question of what happens if the heirs disagree, or if one of them is a kid. We're still talking about whether you should give a choice to the perpetrator to pay or not to pay.
No, because, well, I guess in the sense that if you give them a choice,
By the way, the idea of giving someone who did something wrong a choice as to what to do is not completely foreign in the Islamic tradition. Example, expiation. So if I make an oath and not fulfill it, I have choices. Best thing, of course, is to free a slave if you can. It's very expensive though. But if you can't, if you're poor, then you get to fast. So sometimes the choices are equal, meaning you get to choose whatever, and you end up with 3 nights. Most people will just fast the 3 days, right? Because failing to fulfill an oath. If you kill also inadvertently, in addition to the day, there's kafar, there is expiation. So you have to also fast 60 days or free a slave or whatever, right? If you can't fast in Ramadan, there's also kafar. Every day, either you feed a poor person or you clothe them or you also, what's the other option? Yeah, there's feeding. Yeah, feeding is basically the standard feeding, so sometimes you get a choice. In the kafara, you get a choice. So this is not completely foreign. Yes, you are wrong and you did something bad, but you still get to choose from the two or three options of doing it. So it's not completely weird. Yeah, that different. Maybe you could limit it to the inadvertent killing. You could say, I'd give them that option if it is inadvertent. But you're leaning no.
I'm leaning like if it's too much, it'd be like out of its possibility to make this, then
It is too much in either case. The dia is very high, which is why the old standards also said that the person actually doesn't pay it. It goes to the cousins and the male agonists, the people who stand to benefit if he was rich, because they would collect his. So, okay, but you're leading no. How about you, Gulistan?
Like in my case, I'm tending to know because it depends on which option we are giving them. If they are only equal, and if we are giving this option to everyone.
They're not equal because one of them is to kill the guy. The guy is going to either pay or die. So instead of owing $1 million and transferring this to him, no, well, if he doesn't pay, he dies. So his life now is worth $1 million to his family. Instead of having to work to pay that, well, he's not going to pay you, but he and his cousins, and now in modern times, if we say it's your employer who takes care of this.
Okay, then I would say we can leave these two options, and the family, but not the victim should choose.
Well, the victim wants money. The question here is whether the perpetrator has a choice.
No, he should not have a choice.
Very good. So we're
I think he shouldn't have the choice, but whoever is going to pay the dia for him, if he agrees, have the choice.
oh, you're going to transfer this to
like
yeah, nobody said that. That's a novelty. That it's not up to him, it's up to the male agents.
Because I said no because I'm standing from the victim's perspective. And yes, like you killed my.
Yeah, the judge has to have everybody's perspective.
Right,
You're a
then,
judge. Yeah.
You know, if I am the one who's actually going to pay it for him, no matter what he says, because you could.
They'll
have a
pay for you too,
calculation.
by the way, because tomorrow you might kill and they'll pay for you. The same male agonists pay for each other, and if one of you is rich, the other ones will be enriched. It's supposed to be reciprocal. It's just that it died in modern times. That used to be the tribe, and the tribe used to be strong, and the connection used to be strong. And also, the male agonists are not going to pay in a day. They get 3 years.
Yeah, but still, like if I.
That's a lot, yeah.
You know, if I don't really have a good relationship with this guy, why would I need to pay for him?
Right, so you're thinking in a modern context, yeah. But in the pre-modern context, you would want that family. Wait, do you have friends or not?
Mhm.
Do you bail each other or not?
Yeah.
Why? You just negated what you said.
No, because we're
Random
friends.
people are close to you, but cousins are not. Yeah, because you care about them. So these people supposedly care about each other. It's just that we lost that thing. What we have now is your employer is going to pay. And if you're poor, they'll pay from your future earnings. Very good. So I'm glad we clarified this. Let's keep going though. So this is the question of choice. I think it's more successful definitely when I go with the Arabic, and then you can stop me if I'm saying something that's different from what you're hearing here. Now, in addition, God says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Don't kill yourself. Okay? You're seeing that verse?
Yeah.
How could that help?
It says, and kill not one another.
And then you
Parentheses yourself.
Right. So don't kill yourself is a very general statement in the Quran. What would it mean outside of this context? Don't go and hurt yourself. And it said, don't expose yourself to harm. But here it will be useful because if the perpetrator has any choice to save himself, he's ordered by the verse not to accept death over paying. So that verse will push to say, well, he has a choice. Because if God obliges him to not kill himself if he can, of course it's a natural instinct. Nobody wants to die. So you don't need the verse, but the verse is confirming that your natural instinct is not wrong. وإذا عرض على المكلف فداء نفسه. Okay, so if he's given a choice to save himself for money, that would be an obligation according to the verse. Asluhu, so if you want actually where that comes from, the principle comes from this situation, if you want to understand. If you find the food and you are really hungry and poor, but you find this the food with a price that is reasonable, market price, and then you have the money to pay for it, then you have to pay for it. Meaning you don't have a choice. If you are really hungry and you're going to die out of hunger, and you own enough money to buy according to market price the food that will save you from death, you don't have a choice not to pay. Okay, this is a rule, or this is a case here. Okay, i.e. that he must buy it. How about buying then, or the most of buying himself? If there's any price for which you can buy yourself your life. Okay, based on this report, so this is how our question came out of this question. Based on this report, if the victim has blood owners, some of whom are old, some are young, meaning non-adult, the non-adults, we don't hear them in court. Then we delay the retaliation until the young get to be old, so then their consent is meaningful. That is, especially if the young were closer to the deceased from the old. Here he's saying in inheritance terms. So you remember that when you have a son and a brother, does the brother get any money? Very good. So the son will block the brother. So what happens if the son is the baby and the brother is the adult? We listen to the brother who is blocked in inheritance cases by the baby? No, we have to wait for the baby. You got this one? So we will especially care about the non-adults if they are in an inheritance question in a position to block the adults. Do you know enough about inheritance laws, or is this mysterious to you, or you understand this rule?
I know just the basic, like how much a daughter and the son gets, but not.
But the blocking is very common, right? So the son will block basically every brother, cousin, uncle, right? So the son is very powerful. If he's an asib, right? That's the one, the male that collects after the share carriers go. Can explain another. So anyway, so we will wait for the kids because that's a way to save a life. Now, so then the Rushd still dictating. This was a question that happened in Cordoba in my grandfather's life. His contemporaries used the common view, which was to say, no, we don't wait for the kids, which is to not wait. Okay, he gave a fatwa, so it was not a case, it was a non-judicial case law, right? Fatwa. And he said, no, let's wait. So here, the conflict, I was trying to remember, but now I get it. It is a conflict of what? Riwayah, right? Which is, what is riwayah? It is what is narrated. That is the madhab as it appears from tradition. And the other one is qiyas. So the conflict here is a conflict of reason. In the 6th century or the 5th, it was his grandfather died. His grandfather died 525 of the Hijri. So beginning of the 6th century, 12th century. 6 equals, always we convert, it's about 600 years. Versus what Malik thought just about 400 years prior, which seemed to be the dominant view in the middle. Fashanna alayhi azma, and his contemporaries said, what was this guy? He's making stuff up. Why? Because they're all imitators. And he had to write essentially a book for that. So he wrote essentially a treatise to defend himself, his view. Okay, why did I start with this? I know that was long, but I wanted you to notice that even when a book is dry like this, and you will see how a lot of it is definitions, and the comparisons. We'll go back to the beginning. Let's go back now to the beginning of Jinayat to see how we can distinguish between a crime and a tort. And it's very clear in his definition that a crime has to be a violation of certain things.
I was like wondering, in the case where we have two options, like one, as you said, because it's in our nature, would always use the option with the money, even if they cannot pay it. Oh,
You'd be surprised. So now I actually think that this question is very useful in modern times. There are people who don't value their lives as much as they value money, or they're done. I mean, it depends. You're thinking of someone who's your age. That's the problem. Think of a human being in the abstract. I am 70, 75, and I'm done having worked very hard to save these $1 million for my kids. And I just want to protect the money. I want to protect the kids. I'm not going to have enough time to make the same amount of money. And I did kill someone. I mean, of course, it has to be deliberate for there to get the source, because it was inadvertent. There's no source. But I killed someone. Yeah, he bugged me so much. We'll get now to the conditions, because there are requirements. How many people killed the person? If you're talking retaliation, the ideal case is a murderer who's exactly the same as the victim in every respect. Not a slave and a free person, not a man and a woman, not a Christian and a Muslim, right? So they're the same in everything. And the person, the killer, is using a proper weapon. A rock is not a proper weapon. If you are a Hanafi, this was just a fight. Or if it was just, I mean, so if you want to kill, that person has to be someone who did that kind of. So if I'm in that condition, and as I said, I'm 75, I really got to a situation, maybe someone hurt my kids or something, and I just decided, yes, I'll kill them, even if I die. And then in the moment of responsibility, you're saying, yeah, we'll take all your savings and let you live. No, I don't want to live. If I have that choice, and I can limit the victim's heirs, I'll limit them. Are you able at least to relate? Oh, so that happens, right? Human beings are like, people kill themselves all the time. And, you know, it's not like life, but it is true that the verse comes to your mind. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Is there something wrong in not wanting to live because you're tired? And now, so back, let me ask you the question of the kids then. You, I think, leaned that the choice shouldn't be given to the perpetrator, to the murderer.
Yeah, I revised my view a little bit more now.
Mhm.
Because you mentioned there should be two identical
Right.
people, right? So
That's where there's a consensus, but every judge might still assign capital punishment in certain circumstances. There will just always be disagreement. So, for example, a Maliki would say the rock is good enough, or the fire is good enough. But a Hanafi would say, well, a fire is not usually a murder weapon. So what I'm saying is there will be no consensus, but it's not that you will never find judges who assign qisas in this particular case. Same with evidence, by the way. With evidence, we have serious problems in Maliki law. Maliki law is awful. Sometimes they accept essentially hearsay. Like Malik has this weird view, if there's adultery, for example, and you need 4 witnesses, he says if 2 testify that they heard that 2 witnessed the event and 2 heard 2 more, he'll aggregate these into 4. No madhab does that kind of thing. This is wrong. I mean, it shows that Malik has problems in the way he thinks. He only didn't allow 1 testifying to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 1. He allowed 3 and 1. So if 3 heard definitely from 3 and 1 heard definitely from 1, he'll aggregate. 2 and 2, he'll aggregate. If 4 heard 4, because in his mind too, you know, the 4 people who saw the guy sleeping and saw all the details, because you have to testify to the details. These 4 may be in a different place, or they may have to travel. So that if they just deposit their testimony with people we can trust, we will take it. He's so eager to punish, you see. And of course, in my view, well, this is shubha. Had is a problem in the system. But okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just, unfortunately, it's always complicated. But let's assume that you want to now, you're thinking about a situation, you're saying what I said about when qisas usually happens changes your mind. Why?
Well, because, as a just an example of the 75 maybe where the father killed someone random, right? Like if you say, oh, they're gonna either kill you or take your money, and then of course the guy is probably gonna say, kill me. Like we say, we're gonna either kill your son or take the money. Then I think I'm gonna say, oh,
Can't kill. Why do you kill the son?
no, it's just something like in my mind, like how we like if he
You
killed
wouldn't allow
someone
them to kill the son.
younger,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this hypothesis of killing the son is helping you realize that people evaluate their lives differently, even compared to other lives, not just compared to the money. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Most fathers actually old enough would choose to die than to see their kids die. Because if the kid dies, you're alive. You're not going to be able to deal with it. But yeah, if you have a choice. And that, of course, is a second, like you're falling from an airplane, for example, and you let them go in the sea and then you die. Or like what happened in the Titanic movie, he allowed the woman to live because love is sometimes like that. So, but are you getting to how? So unfortunately, everybody's restricted. When you're participating in a system like this, there are things that you didn't choose to decide. What I'm also hoping is that in this century, Islam's 15th century, you should have more freedom than you had, say, 500 years ago. 500 years ago, the system was going unhappy. And now you're going to have to build from scratch. You have to have more freedom. So I'm deliberately interested in reducing the importance of Sunnah and Quran, because also the way they were read, I mean, it's not like you'll never chuck them, because the idea of revelation is hovering over the system. But then they have to be a one-to-one correspondence. Now, Gulistan, do you have other answers to this question? I still didn't get an answer about the non-adults. Do you wait for the non-adults? Especially the one blocking the adult who wants to kill today.
I want to wait. I think.
You want to wait? Yeah, because there's also, so you might be developing a principle, which is when in doubt, don't kill. You can have a principle like that. Okay, let's go back to when he starts, where he starts Jinayat. The first problem is offenses. Let's see the classes of Jinayat and then go back and see if offense is a good translation. Jinayah is an unfortunate word because it can be very narrow and limited only to violations of the body and parts of the body. Meaning, Jinayah in the traditional sense, and Ibn Rushd is different, does not include attacking the honor of the person. So, sexual crimes are not really Jinayah because they're hudud. What is hudud? Hudud is either between 5 and 7 crimes where the punishment is clear. Do you know them? What are the hudud? Jara'im al-hudud, right? Yeah. So with adultery, how many lashes? 100. Accusation of adultery? 80. Drinking alcohol? 40. Some say 80. But it is by consequentialist reasoning. But it is 40 usually. Theft, cutting the hand. What else? Sariqa, zina, shurb al-khamr, qadh. There is one I'm missing. Oh, and then there are these crimes that are really collected, like hadd al-baghi, hadd al-haraba. So baghi is essentially rebelling against the government. And the punishment is, well, that they'll be fought. And the same with ridda, right? It's counted. Ridda is one of them, unfortunately. If you are a Muslim and then you decide not to be a Muslim, some say it is execution, because there's a consensus under Abu Bakr that when the people reneged on their agreement with the Prophet, he fought them. So that means he could apply it to the individual too and kill him. So the hudud is one of these, 5 to 7. Haraba is the last one. Haraba is highway robbery. The punishment is very severe too, killing and so on. So these hudud here means crimes of specified punishment. In the technical use, it's not jinayat. Jinayat is specifically hitting somebody or harming them, destroying their teeth, destroying their, you're making them not hear. So it's Jinayat technically is crimes against the body, but he generalizes it. So here he has something very creative and different. Al-Jinayat, so there are 4 kinds: attacks on the body, the souls, and the limbs. That's the same. That's one category of the 4. Okay, so I cut somebody's hand, I killed them, or I hurt them so much they're bleeding. That's really the technical use of Jinayat. That's it. The first of the 4, and he ends up with 4.5 basically, because he has the wine coming out of the 4. So the first one is the technical Jinayat. What's the second one? Attacks on the honor, which is zina. You get to, sex without marriage, whether it's choice or not, rape or not. An attack on the money. The third category of the 4 is attacking the money. And that he puts under it, if it is highway robbery, if it is done with terrorism also, that would be haraba. If it is without ta'wil, meaning if it is a rebellion, that's not because you think the government is unjust. But if it is bita'wil, it's called bagh. So attacks on the property, he puts 2 under it. So you have the sariqa, which is the normal theft, and he has attacks on the population because you think the government is unjust, attacks on population if you think without anything. Okay, so these are 3 crimes. He says, if it is without ta'wil, if there is no argument for it that the government is wrong, then it is hiraba. If there is ta'wil, it's baghi. And if it is just the regular hirz sariqa, like I steal your jewelry from your bedroom, that's sariqa. Okay, and he says, and if it is by force and terror, he calls it ghasb. So all these are crimes against the property. That's the third category. Got longer. Don't lose the classification. The last one, he says, attacks on the honor, but it is different from the second one is really an attack on the female body, right? How does he translate it? For which? Sexual organs. Very good. And what's the 4th? Honor or something like that, right?
Yeah, that is against
Repetition, because what slandering someone, saying that you are either, if you say you're a son of a bitch, that means your father is an adulterer, or if you tell someone you are an adulterer, that would be qadf. So these are 4. He didn't commit to 4, he added, and then there's that kind of half category where the violation has to do with food or drinking. And in that's the weird exception out of the 4, is when you drink wine. It's also a punishment. You see, so that is a very good definition for a criminal offense. A criminal offense, as opposed to a tort, is a violation of any of these 4. A tort is always just the money, is the second category. And without malice. In all 4 examples, there's malice. Because if malice meaning, right, you know what malice is, right, as opposed to negligence. So if someone is doing highway robbery or rebelling against the government, says this is an unfair government, or stealing your jewelry, or using it by force, by the force of power, like what happens is, when you coerce someone to give you money, that's the last one, the ghasb. All of them have malice. And the first category doesn't exist at all in torts. Attacking the body is never a tort. And attacking someone's, the sexual organs or attacking someone's reputation, that's never a tort. It's only the second one that clashes, but there's always that malice. Okay, so what's the definition of a crime then on Ibn Rushd's expansive? It's really great that he has that. It's good that he goes against the habit, because the habit again is to limit Jinayah to that first category. Okay, so what is a crime then, as opposed to a tort?
It's a crime against, like,
It's a violation of either the body, property, or especially the sexual organs or the reputation of an individual. And kind of a half category, 4.5, that is also a crime against your own body by drinking something. That's wrong. That shouldn't be. Okay. Good. And then you'll move to the first category, which is the where we have either qisas or mal. Okay. سوف نبتدئ منها بالحدود التي فيها الدماء فنقول إن الواجب في إتلاف النفوس إنما هو قصاص. So what is required to compensate for these, either retaliation or property, which is called blood money. How does he translate the compensation? Very good. Yeah. Okay. So now he will get to both of these. Now, you didn't hear enough about dia in the Intro to Islamic Law, right? Is that you started to hear more in that graduate class? Do you have a sense of what dia is then now?
I think so, because that's a real common thing in Chinese law. Like
Very good.
But in China, it's like you pay and you are punished. It's not like you pay it.
Very nice. Okay. So do you compensate for the life and also for the limb, right?
Yes.
Is there a different price? So is killing someone more expensive than cutting her or destroying their ear?
Yeah, I think it depends on like the degree of injury or degree of loss.
Very good. Yeah, it's probably more developed than this, but if it takes the same idea, it's very nice.
There's no, like, I don't know if there's like an actual calculator because the number always is like weird. It's just some random number. It's not like a whole number. It's
Are
like
there cases
really
you're sure about that you know for sure?
detailed.
You know how someone paid and for what? Destroying somebody's
You know,
hearing
yeah,
or
we'll go that later, but it's like, yeah, like we always know the exact number, but usually, like I said, there's like all different parts. There's some
what's the
parts-
ballpark? So is it based on income at all? What you pay? Or is it based on the victim's income?
Actually, no. It's a lot of different categories involving like some of them have like mental, like you, if this loss has a mental harm in me, then I could ask for this mental. It really depends on how much the person asked, the victim's family asked, with the lawyer, and then how much they negotiate.
Yeah, that's
So-
more like the American system. That doesn't really look like this at all, because at some point you have to, I mean, you have to start with something. This is just negotiation, right? It's basically like settlement through the courts. That's what happens here. That's what happens here. But it gets idiotic, right? Because, for example, after 9/11, the victims of 9/11, they were asking for compensation. They were trying to get an American court to rule that the Saudis who were involved have to compensate. The money they asked for was more than the world economy completely, more than the world GDP, something like 100 trillion or something, because they kept looking at, the amount of the earning capacity that these people would have and the destruction and how it happened to New York after. Right. So if people are asking, I know there was no other party to look at it. Of course, it was ridiculous because once people realized, wow, if the world produces $200 trillion a year and you're asking for compensation that is the whole world economy or beyond, I think it was beyond. I mean, I think it really gets idiotic because you have to have limits. Now, this, of course, is arbitrary too, but you can work on it. You can develop it. So, okay, let me ask another question. This system distinguishes based on the victim's earning capacity, not the perpetrator. Meaning, if a woman dies, it's less money because the woman doesn't work and doesn't make as much money for her family. This is a big contentious issue, of course. And the Iranians finally now equate them. So dia in Iran, men and women are the same. But why do they acquiesce? Because they now see that men and women can make the same amount of money. Right? Of course, here in this country, they keep saying 76 cents to the dollar, but it's close enough. It's not being a man or a woman that makes the difference. What is your sense of the earning capacity of the victim's impact on the assessment of the deed? What do you think? Think it should play a major role or a secondary role?
I think it makes sense, but like we were talking about in class, like a wealthy person versus a poor person. But I think it makes
No, this is the victim. This is the victim's earning capacity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's why I'm saying like it makes sense because it's not like subject to the offender's wealth. It's not like
Right,
wealth.
and it's not that we will pay more for a rich person. It's arbitrary in a way because a rich man and a poor man are compensated equal, right?
But we're saying if they're earning capacity.
Right. It's only with the men and women, and then they pay the Jew less than the Muslim,
Oh,
and that is not because of the earning capacity. It's just a way to humiliate them or make them realize that they're secondary, something like that.
Okay, so the earning capacity is a fixed number.
At least it makes a distinction between men and women. Of course, the amount
It's
is,
not
is a fix,
subject to the person.
right? Because you don't have tons of dias. It's always 100 camels. And the difference between the deliberate acts dia and the unintentional is significant because the camels for the deliberate are more expensive. So it ends up being something like 1 million versus 500,000.
Okay, now I don't agree with that because you know if you kill a young person, a young kid, then versus you know he has like it's the American way of thinking. It's like their potential, their life.
That's right. There is a difference between the fetus and the rest. But you're right. One of the problems with this system also doesn't distinguish between an adult and a kid if they're the same gender, same religion, everything, because the kid is going to be an adult. You just ended their life early. You see how many problems? See, every time you think of an old system, now, that's why you have to be comfortable saying no to tradition. It's not that we discovered this only from modern laws. It's easy to think about it. I've always looked at the Shafi'i law is worse, actually, because I think they have the Jew is a slave or something like that. It ends up being a ninth of the dia. So it's better not to pay anything. The slave gets a half, and then it's a half of the third.
Well, what is your opinion on
I mean, I'm liking it as an idea, but I want to fix it now because it has to be a logic to it.
Yeah, I thought when we said dia, it's like, you know, it's subject to the individual's earning potential. So if you are like if you can make more, then the dia is more, but it's just
No. So it's the victim. I'm happy with the old system's distinction based on the earning, but I don't see the earning as men, women, Christian, whatever. I see it now as where you are in society. So okay,
yeah, like individuals earning potential.
very good, and the family. Like if I kill a poor family's kid, it's awful because the kid might be rich and all that. But you might become rich over time. But they don't expect more than 500,000. I mean, we could, I guess, debate that because you could say, oh, the kid was so bright, and we could give them more because based on that. And it might be actually kind of a door that you can't close. But the logic of it makes sense because you're compensating the family. There is no good price for a human being. Okay, let's just say. And once the person is dead, he's not coming back. If you want to sit on this and let's just dwell on it until you get it. So sometimes you just need time. Gulistan, tell us something. What's on your mind? Okay, if you hate it, just tell us, I hate it. This is not going to work because it will be, I don't know, 50 factors and we can never reconcile it.
Yeah, I think the problem is what we have right now. We cannot generalize it. So the situation should be always an individual situation where we always need to think about the options between the family because, as you said before, when we make it dependent on the earning of the victim, we will probably will we look, okay, he's like 15 years old when he died. So he probably will live like 30 or 40 years, and then he will probably earn this amount of money, and we should give him something about that, or like how we can, I think it's really hard to find a good.
So what's a better alternative? You're going back to jail, or going back to retaliation, or going back to let the guy go through?
Going to like calculate.
Qisas is better.
I think Qisas in this case, what we are also talking about, should be the option which is the first option. So it should be something which scares the one who did the victim, because who did the crime, because otherwise we also need to think about the society we were talking about. Even though I don't think that really every time we do a Qisas, sometimes it can lead to a society with less sensibility for it, but it should be there. So it should not be. I think when we always have this option will be used much more than Qisas, and then we will lose.
Right. There is a big danger once the price is set, that will be the price. Meaning people will always say, actually, this is a saying in Egypt, if you know how much you're gonna owe, just kill him. Because you know how much you'll pay. And that is actually a general saying. So when people say that, they apply it to everything. Like if I'm gonna hurt you and only get into an argument, then that's the deal. That's your price. Or if I'm gonna, I don't know, hurt a police officer and then having to flee the country, well, that's the deal. Whatever compensation. Okay, eat and take a break.
And I was like thinking,
And you didn't like the sweets?
or-
All right, okay.
Yeah, I'm just. No, I'm just curious, what is it?
It's kind of baklava, right? It's also urban baklava, so it's just kind of.
Oh, yeah, yeah, try different things and tell me what you think. I know it's very sugary, very strong in the sugar.
But in Ramadan, it's you eat it often.
Unfortunately, I like it so much, so I try not to allow myself to. Well, this is the guy who gave us this as a gift. Is a guy actually who does our investment with me and Dima. So he's not even a friend; he's like a business acquaintance. But they do that like to show you that they care about you. So he takes our money and probably steals it, but well, he invests it. Yeah. So,
In stocks or?
in stocks and different things, yeah. So he's a Muslim kid from Bidayat is his name. Pakistani originally. So supposedly you have some limits, but it's a big question about how much can you limit yourself? Like, would you avoid arms and avoid anything that is problematic? How about, well, tourism has bars. Okay. Then we'll see the problems in qisas. Nothing is free of problem. If you think qisas is good, let's see how many problems. 5 people kill someone. You kill all 5? Yes, no? What do you think about cannibalism? Should cannibalism be allowed in Israel? Never. Yeah, eating a human being if you're about to die. Right, it's not a choice. You will die. When I ask a question, take it seriously. Okay, you have to answer the question. Don't answer that I'm at home and I don't care, right? Because we all are happy and we don't care. But this is a question of Moby Dick, right? You are at sea. You see yourself dying, so you're losing your faculties. And there is a dead body there. And it's disgusting and all. But if you cook it a little bit and eat some, you will survive.
I think some things should always be left alone, no matter in which situation we are. And this is like for me a relationship. Even if it's a dead body, it is a human being. So in this case, I think there would always be another option to survive, even if it's just shown as the only option there. But in this case, I think that was also something I was thinking. But when it comes to money, it's a human dignity should also be something which is, people should be aware of, because there could be a family who needs some money, but they want to take some money, for example, because they think like he's the murder of my husband or my son, or they say, will with some money. Like some people have this kind of.
So when you say there's another option, what is the other option if I'm in the ship and I can see my body disintegrating? What's the other option? It's dying, right? So you prefer dying to eating a human being to survive?
Yes, or really try to do something to get people, or when you're on a ship, or.
That's not the question. You're changing the question.
But I would try to.
We tried all that and it's not working. We are in an arid situation.
then I would prefer to die.
Very good. Okay, so the other choice is death, which is also, so that comes up in just in a little bit. When you are coerced to kill or die, what do you do? You will die. But is that right? I killed a lot of Iraqis with my tax money. I preferred to live and kill these people than to die.
Yeah, but you don't do it intentionally, so you don't have control over the money you are given. You cannot
But the
do
question
that.
of coercion is meaningless if it means only that somebody's giving me a gun and asking me to shoot somebody, because that's not a real question. The real question is if I'm coerced. So here at some point he says, Malikis say that if I'm coerced to kill or be killed, they say no, die. You have to die. And with that, cannibalism came up because they're sure about cannibalism, right? They're with you. You can't eat a human being to die, to kill, to survive. So if you can't kill, if you can't eat the dead human being, it's actually a very bad analogy if you think about it, because cannibalism requires that the person is dead. You're not going to kill the person to eat. It's only a rare case of cannibalism, where you're going to kill someone to eat them to survive. That's a rare case. But most of the time we're talking about a corpse. But actually he has it here as there is a consensus that you can't kill to eat. You can't kill a human being to eat them. Therefore, if you are coerced to kill to save yourself, that's not a real coercion. Okay, I'm just giving you a kind of a quick thing. Qisas has so many problems. Of course, in your mind, there's no difference between Muslim and Christian, right? A Christian kills a Muslim, we kill them. A Muslim kills a Christian, they also get killed. No problem, right? Hanafis say that, there's no difference. Most of them have that issue. How about shibh al-amd? When does your qisas apply? When there's a fight and someone goes harsh, that happens all the time, by the way. Most people kill without intent. Is it qisas? Meaning the intentions developed in the fight. So you know these Hanafis who insisted that it had to be a knife or a proper weapon is because they could see that fighting leads to death all the time, and it was never contemplated at the beginning. So where are you on this? A fight leads to death. Could be actually like a funny death. Like, you know, on a cliff the other day, there was a kid who drank too much and he died here in Santa Barbara. So what if that was part of a fight? Now that was not, there's no death. Right? There's no killing. I mean, he died, right? But he's the sixth actually to die in the last few years. There's a cliff here that's kind of famous. Unfortunately, when the kids drink too much and go there, they just fall and they kill themselves. Yeah, just the other day. Yeah. We can look it up to you get the details. So, but what if it is part of a fight? If there is a cause, a distal cause. Like I'm fighting with someone, I'm not aware that they are drunk, and then I hit them too much, then they get to that cliff, they fell. They fall.
I think it's good to think about other options like qisas.
There you go. So qisas, when does qisas apply? Because you're happy to find qisas as a solution to the dia problems, which boggles your mind. The dia is not working.
Yeah.
But then I'm giving you, I want to know when qisas applies, because it might be actually a very thin slice of death, of murder crimes. And you know what we call manslaughter in modern time. Manslaughter, I'm driving too fast. And it's negligent and all. And I kill someone.
I think qisas should be really used then when you're 100% sure it was intentionally. Like, we know, for example, okay, Mursi wasn't really killed intentionally, but he died at
Very
the
good.
risk. But sometimes if he would be, for example, dying because he's killed, then I think the killer should also be killed. Like in this situation where you know really 100% sure there was an intention, there was a plan. Often we have this that people plan it.
Very good, very good. Well, that's the qaratul. This is most modern laws have this idea. They have to plan it ahead of time. That means qisas doesn't solve most of your problems. So you have to figure out the deal that you don't like.
Yeah. Like, it's not that I don't like it. I think it's definitely a good option, but I think the dia
It's a problem, I know. But you know what is really strange? I've always found that when this discussion comes up, people need a long time to finally realize that these things happen, that they're frequent, and that we contribute to all these things all the time. If my taxes didn't go to kill people in Iraq, they went to prisons. Prisons are the second thing that we use the money for. So all these California people, humiliation and sexual abuse is always there. Okay, even in the European reports I've read. So of course they say yes, this is worse. But so at least I'm humiliating and sexually abusing people with my money all the time. I have to feel good about it. I have to say, yeah, well, that's better than the alternative. The alternative is that these people will be out on the streets and abusing other people. I'm not saying that these are angels. Minion. Now you got it? How? This is going to always be bad. It's going to always be difficult.
Yeah, I had a different kind of deal with you when we were talking about feeding people. Like I was more, if that person is already dead and if he wasn't killed to be eaten, then if you see this corpse, you didn't kill him, he wasn't killed because someone else wanted to eat him, then it's okay to. Yeah, but
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's good. You're recognizing it's a hard question. What was the time I was interested in the cannibalism fatwas? Because apparently it was like an issue in the 13th century, 7th century, 15th century in Egypt, in some of these times of famine. And one of the creative fatwas were saying that, well, it won't save you. They had this medical view that if you eat a human being, we've seen that when people do that, they die anyway. That means you can't really do it if it doesn't fulfill that objective. I guess that solved the problem for a lot of people because they had the intuition that you had that it's better to die than to live with that memory that you ate a human. Okay, fire. Is fire a normal weapon? Or making a ditch? If I make a ditch and somebody dies, if I make a ditch and I know most likely people will die and I don't care, qisas or no? See, okay, you're starting now to think. Let's read slowly then. Let's go back. So we're starting now with his definition. We got four things that we're trying to protect. By the way, our theory of rights in Islamic law, a lot of people would attribute it to Shafi'i, but our theory of rights comes from criminal law. So حقوق الله and حقوق العباد, these two notions, God has rights and humans have rights. Human rights, حقوق العباد, are the things for which we have punishments that even God cannot change, and the other way around too. So what happens if I forgive because my mom committed adultery or my wife committed adultery? My forgiveness isn't worth anything. Why? It's haqqillah. This is a divine right. God has the right to punish the adulterer once the evidence is out. But how about the blood of my father? Somebody killed my father. God doesn't matter. I matter more. I can forgive. That's haqqillah. So these are the two pure ones. Right? There's no forgiveness in adultery, and there's absolute right to forgive in qisas, in murder, in the Jinayat. And then Shafi'i took it and played with it. So then we were wondering about qadh, for example, and the ones that are mixed. Because here there's haqqillah and there's haqqillah. Because these are the easy ones. If the forgiveness changes the rule, then it's clearly a human right, not a divine right. So these jinayat questions are important. Jinayat and hudud are important because they create this notion of rights. Islamic law is not based on rights. As you know, it's based on categorization of actions. It's the classification of human actions. That's how. So fiqh gives you judgments for activities. Every human act, any day, any time of the day, will fall under one of 5 categories if you're a Shafi'i or Maliki or Hanbali, and it will fall under 7 if you are one of 7 if you're a Hanafi. You know these ones here. Let's stick to the 5. Obligatory. You have to do it. Haram. You can never do it. Right? The extremes are. Obligatory, you have to do it. Meaning you get punished if you don't do it, and you get rewarded if you do it. Haram, you get punished. The obligatory, yeah, you have to do it. The other one, haram, you can't do it. Also, there's reward and punishment on both ends. In the middle, mubah, nothing. No reward, no punishment, except maybe based on intentions or excesses or whatever. And in the middle here, if you have something between obligatory and mubah, obligatory and permitted, what would that be? Recommended. So there's reward if you do it, but no punishment if you don't do it. And the reprehensible or the makruh is closer to prohibited. There's only reward if you avoid, no punishment. Right? So these are the five. They become seven when the Hanafis add this element of certainty. So if something is obligatory, most likely they put something called makruh, then tahrim. And if it is something that's obligatory, wajib, they say this is, so there's fard and wajib. If it is close to wajib, it's fard. If it is close to haram, they say makruh tahrim. Okay, so these weird categories are basically the same as the extremes, but there is uncertainty. Okay, so that's law. But then here there are rights. And you can see these rights are not the same as modern human rights. Human rights in modern times come from natural rights. They come from the Roman natural rights, after, of course, a lot of modification in the 17th century. So to protect property, the sexual organs, the body, and the soul, and the and also even the stomach, right, of the human being, we get these punishments. The punishments are there to protect, to create rights, to protect rights. Okay, where did we stop in the English? I'll go back to the English and try to go with you. Let me, Menia, you didn't read enough. Where did we stop? So start from wherever we started.
I think you're right now by the book of Qisas, so
Okay, let's do that. The book of Qisas. The book is divided into two sections.
The book of study of this book is.
Yeah, lex talionis is the Latin for retaliation. This lex talionis is Hammurabi had a version of it. Of course, Judaism had a version of it. Romans had a version of it. So yeah, that's the fancy term that people who know something about criminal law, the history of it. Okay, good. It's just the translation. Qisas was translated twice as lex talionis, the law of retaliation. Talionis, that's the retaliation, comes from that talion, the law of talion. Okay.
The study of this book is first divided into two parts: the cause, that is the cause of qisas, and the obligation, that is qisas and its substitutes when it has one. We begin first with the examination of the cause. The study of the cause relates to the description of homicide.
Yeah, homicide and the killing.
Which combined gives rise to the cause and to the description of the victim in qisas. Not every killer that there may be is liable to qisas, nor is he liable for every homicide that he may have committed, nor due to any victim.
So each one of these elements is going to change the ruling. It's going to affect the qisas. Who's killing? Who's killed? How?
Nor due to any victim who may have been killed. Rather, the liability arises for a particular killer for a determined homicide due to a specific victim. As the aim in this chapter is to maintain a balance between first with the discussion of the murderer, then with the act of murder and death.
Yeah, so it's just, yeah, we're salivating now. We'll see how many things can eliminate qisas.
What is homicide?
Homicide is a general category for the murder of a human being, killing a human being. But it includes manslaughter and murder in the US. So if we say this is a homicide investigation, we don't know if it is a murder or manslaughter.
It just involves the person being killed.
Exactly, very good. Yeah. Because and the side thing has to do with killing. So if I say pesticide, that's usually something that kills insects. It's and if I say regicide, that's usually a murder of a king, usually the son or the brother. Yeah. patricide, killing a father. So there are many words that have this side at the end. Suicide, killing the self. So let's see. So now I'm excited now to see what is the ideal case. It comes in the first line here. They agreed. Okay, as to now the conditions in the perpetrator or the killer.
They agreed that for the murderer who is subjected to qisas, it is stipulated by agreement that he be sane, valid, having attained puberty, and possesses a free will for acting directly without the participation of another.
Very good. These are the 4 conditions. And then there's a disagreement he's saying about coercion, but at least 4, and then we'll add. So what are the 4? Let's simplify them. Reason, majority, choice, and being the lone killer, right? Being not sharing it with anybody. Now let's see. Disagreed. They disagreed on what?
They disagreed generally about the mukra, one coerced, and the
Okay.
mukri.
Why is that?
Coerced.
Because if I tell you to kill Gulstan, there are actually 2 potential killers. I ordered you, therefore I may be a killer. You did it, therefore you may be a killer.
So which one is the?
We need to know each. If I'm the king, if I'm the sultan, maybe I'm the one who killed you. Who killed that other person.
Yeah, I'm like,
So who killed the Iraqis? I did, and Bush did. Because
So
Bush
that-
is the mukri.
so are you the one coerced or are you the coercer?
Very good. And both of them will have to ask, to what extent can the coercer be an actual killer? And therefore, we apply the qisas.
Okay, okay, so the coercer is not the actual
Exactly.
killer.
Yeah, so I'm
But
going
it's
to force someone to
for-
kill.
Oh, okay.
That happens in army units all the time. It happens in jail all the time. If I am the head of a kind of a prison unit, and I keep telling the guards, beat them, even if they die, who killed the person? The one who gave the instruction or the one who actually killed them? Both are open, right? Maybe we'll kill both. Maybe we'll kill one, not the other.
Okay, so what's the difference between one coercer?
Coercer is the head of the jail who commanded the guard to kill the prisoner.
guard?
The guard is the coerced,
Okay,
and the coercer is his boss. So think, the one who's doing it and his boss, or the one who's controlling him. Coercion is very important in law. And again, it becomes really totally useless for me to read these old texts if I am not open to understanding them generally. If you read in Shaybani, for example, what happens when the Sultan tells you you have to do adultery? Are you imagining that you have to do adultery is like giving you someone to have? No, it's usually forcing you, putting you in certain conditions where you might do this, putting you in a very difficult situation where you might do this. The adultery, maybe it's not as much, but yeah, forcing us to kill and to steal from other nations because it's just a rich nation that keeps killing and stealing from other nations. That's the only meaning for that question today. Yeah, so because otherwise you won't understand the question. Okay, let's keep going. وَبِالْجُمْلَةِ الْآمِرُ وَالْمُبَاشِرُ. So either, so it's the orderer that's a coercer and the one who's doing it in fact.
the person issuing the order is the one that's committing the act.
There we go.
Malik,
And Ahmad and Abu Thur and a group, what did they say?
and a group of jurists says that the liability of the sus is on the
The one who did it, in fact. And
bashir.
Mubash, that's the one who actually took a knife and killed someone. But the orderer, the one who gives the order, gets punished, but not by qisas. So this is the first intuition. What's another group said?
A group of jurists said that both are to be subjected to
Very good.
qisas. This is the case when there is no coercion and the emir has no authority over the
Meaning, if the one apparently coerced or the one ordered didn't really mind doing it. It's just the way gangs work. there's a boss, or kill this guy. They agreed. So they both had a choice to either create the conditions for the murder or actually doing it. But if there is a sultan, okay, go ahead. Keep going.
When the Amir has authority over the
Mhm.
Amir, that is the they disagree with the opinions. One group says that the Amir is supposed to put the Qisas, not the
More, or the one who's ordered. Huh?
which is the opinion of Dawood and Abu Hanifa, and is one of the two opinions of Shafi'i. Another group said that the person who errs is to be subjected to Qisas, and it's not the which is
Yeah.
or which is the other of the two opinions of Shafi'i.
Mhm.
The third group said they are both to be subjected to Qisas, which is Malik's.
Yeah. What do you think now? I mean, we have tons of questions that we need to work in our mind. At least imagine the two distinct scenarios of someone ordering and someone implementing, but it's clear that the one implementing isn't happy about it. And another situation where the one implementing is just as happy. That's his role. What is the distinction in your mind? When there is a coercion, let's take the hard one. When there is a coercion, the one who's killing you is not the one who really wants to do it, but he's the one who's doing it. Who do you want to kill of the two? Or do you have enough doubt that you'll let both free?
I'd say the Amir.
The one who gave the orders.
Yeah.
The one who gave the orders.
Also, you can't really tell if they actually, didn't want to do it, or is it like, they pretend to be doing it.
If I'm a judge and I execute someone, and it turns out that I really did that because I hated them, that is killing. But killing by the hand of someone else. Would you kill that judge? Apply qisas because they really use their authority to implement that death. You understand the question? So here we have here, because the Amir, in my mind, in your mind, is always a gangster. Doesn't have to be. An army unit leader or a judge, someone who is using a human being as a weapon. And well, in normal circumstances, they're killing someone they think they have a reason to kill. But what if it turns out after an investigation that it was retaliation or that it was just malice? Like someone who I hate. And I'm using, it so happens that I am in the military and I get to have someone kill them. Would you kill that person? Would you apply qisas? In your mind, the qisas is a very pure scenario and very rare scenario. Right? You'll do it only when it is really clear.
Yeah, but in this case,
It is clear.
yeah, it is clear because
Mhm.
I was like thinking about Hitler. Like maybe he doesn't kill
Very good.
himself one person, but he's the reason why a lot of people get killed. So
Very good.
I would say person I have.
This is a very high responsibility for all military commanders. Because when you go to Bosnia to save Muslims from the Serbs, you'll also be in a situation where you will be killing maybe some innocent Serbs. You are a killer then, just by virtue of being the commander. And then you might owe qisas.
Yeah, but I would say this is a situation where a war is
Mhm.
like
Extenuating. That's an extenuating circumstance.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Yeah, like in that case, then you have another person who order you to go to this place and then to actually conduct
Right.
the-
So we'll get the commander in chief, one person responsible for all the wars. So that you see how the responsibility gets higher. When you run for office, you want to think about all that. You'll be in a situation. So Obama killed bin Laden without any process. A lot of people think that that's an honorable thing to do because no process would have worked with this guy. If you put him in an American court, it would be a circus. There's no point. The guy confessed, essentially. He confessed, because there was that video where he talks about how he was expecting. He never really confesses. So, by the way, I want to ask you about the standards of confession, right? Because the Iqrar, that's another chapter. What is an Iqrar? When do you say that the person actually confessed? If someone is Schadenfreude in someone, saying, oh, he deserved it, is that a confession? Or I would have killed him if I could. Is that a confession? Or actually, I kind of killed him in my mind. And I was really happy that that happened. Is that a confession? What is a confession? Would you ask the confession to be repeated? In Islamic law, also, we have this thing about repeating it. Because sometimes people say it and then they retract it. Repeat, give the person multiple days, to say and see if the different mood affects. All this is, I hope, if it is working in your head, it's asking you about to what extent are you willing to forgive? If you get now overwhelmed by how many times you will be wrong to convict, and you would rather than, so you see, my fear of punishment comes from that suffering over time, that you realize it just, study the system and you'll have all these definitions and you'll always think that with the best rules, you're making about 20% to 30% mistakes at best. You're killing very few people mistakenly and letting very few people also go out without a trial. But you're leaning, of course, to forgive, right? Because to have one person convicted wrongly is a very high cost. It's the same logic. I think it will end up being just unleash the criminals, because no system is going to work, and you will never be happy once you visit the prisons and these places. You will never be happy. You'll feel that there's always something wrong. Anyway, that's a cheap win. If I win that quick, of course, I don't have to win. I could be wrong, but I want you to keep thinking about it. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so we said there are three views, right? Shafi'i hesitated, and Malik is the only one who wanted to kill both. Okay.
Those who do not impose had took into account the effectiveness of coercion in waiving the penalty due to the similarity of the state of the coerced with one who has no will of his own. Those who upheld the sauce for him appoint to him the hook of a person with a free will, and this is because the coerced person resembles from one aspect a person having a free will, while he resembles from another aspect a person dominated in other directs, like one falling from a height or swept by the wind from place to place. Those who subjected both to qisas do not put coercion as an obstacle and with punishment for the nothing. Not did they consider the absence of direct causation an obstacle for them. Those who subjected only them to qisas compared the person given the water with the dumb instrument, jurors applying head to the person who does not act directly consider the term murderer applicable to him metaphorically. The Malikites relied in murder by the coerced on murder under threat of death by virtue.
They relied, he said, on the murdering? No, they relied in their opinion of executing the coerced, the one who was forced to either kill or be killed. They still execute that person by their consensus. They relied on their consensus that if he was about to die because of hunger, he'd still not be allowed to kill a human being to eat. Go back to what Atamd al-Maliki. I'm surprised that he didn't get that, or he just did it haphazardly. Let's see, the Malikis, where are they? Those who subjected, Malikis relied in murder by the coerced on murder. This is a very bad translation. The Malikis corrected. The Malikis relied in executing the one who was forced to kill or not be, or be killed, they relied on their consensus, their prior consensus, that if you're hungry and about to die, you cannot kill to eat. So did he not understand the text? This is weird. Here's the Arabic. وَقَدْ اعْتَمَدَتِ الْمَالِكِيَّةُ فِي قَتْلِ الْمُكْرَهِ عَلَى الْقَتْلِ بِالْقَتْلِ. Qatl here, that first one is executing. In their opinion, to execute the one who was coerced to kill, otherwise he'd be killed, by their consensus that if he was about to die because of hunger, he still didn't have the right to kill a human being. As for collaboration, or the collaborator with the killer who does it deliberately, that's a murderer, first degree murder essentially. Well, the killing could be intentional or not intentional. Also, the killer might or might not be of legal responsibility, might not have reached that point of being mukallaf. And we will talk about deliberate killing when a group killed a human being, kill one person. That's the collaboration thing. You can think of many scenarios from now. So let's think. Okay, if I throw someone from a high mountain, and instead of them falling, they die. Someone took them midway and killed them. So prevented my act, which would have killed them. They had some kind of jumpy thing or whatever, or they just took them and killed them. And how about if they fell but didn't die, and someone finished them? But you didn't ask whether they would have died anyway or not. So they fell and they were dying, but maybe they would have been saved. Was there enough time for a medic to come and save them?
You see, this was actually
Well, it happens all the time, right?
A husband pushed the wife
Mm-hmm.
she fell off accidentally, but she was actually saved by another by the police in Thailand or like in Vietnam, and then they were traveling and then pushed them off. She was eventually saved, and then she finally told the police that it was
Well, she was saved, meaning she didn't die. So the question here is attempted murder. Then. There is no murder because she didn't die.
yes.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so that's attempted murder. So that's in modern law. There's that distinction between whether the act of intentionally killing actually leads to death or not. Otherwise, it's attempted murder. Attempted murder can still lead to a lot of years in jail, but yeah, it's not murder. See, moral luck. Sometimes there is a more luck element in morality. You actually wanted to kill, and what you did was enough to kill, but somebody saved them. Very good. So these are all doubts. We're still talking about qisas. See, he's going to have a lot of energy to just see how much qisas, which is again a good option. It's a clean option. It's the actual qisas means chasing. The Arabic word qisas is to have something and you repeat it. So qisas is supposed to be about equality, equating the murder or equating the crime by the punishment. That's what qisas is. So if it applies to when it applies to limbs, it's the same thing. Someone cuts a hand, it's cutting the hand. If you can be equal, because sometimes you're afraid not being able to do it exactly right. So therefore, there's no qisas. You go to diyah when it is hard to do qisas, if it is required. Right? So here he gets into mukallaf or non-mukallaf. We said that. How about a crazy person? We didn't talk about the crazy yet. Insane people kill all the time. This is actually your question in modern times. There are all these theories now that all criminals are mentally compromised. Well, they'll never be punished on the old systems. They could be confined, they could be forgiven, they could be whatever, but and then also freedom and slavery, which is that completely out of the question? Like there's nothing in modern conditions that look like freedom and slavery? I think, for example, the trafficked people, if they end up killing the baby they were supposed to take care of it, would you treat them the same way as the person who, human trafficking still happens all the time. There are people who come, say, from Indonesia, Malaysia, different countries, and then you find them here doing massage. They didn't really choose to sometimes do sexual stuff, but sometimes they work. They're trafficked. Those people are very rich and they are able to get visas and do these things. And once they're outside of a certain environment, they go to another environment, different laws. And the United States is struggling with this human trafficking thing. Happens also from Mexico a lot. People come to work in the drug trade. In China, right? Yeah. I mean, once the country is big, it's very hard to control these things. It doesn't matter. Okay. Anyway, I don't just want you to feel miserable or anything like that, but I want you to realize that once we think about crime, this is the deal. Sociology was cleaner, or it was easier, right? But sociology also, this sociology of crime.
I have tomorrow the office hour with Professor Bidayat. I hope that.
What are you reading with Lisa?
Yeah, she will find me. I think he's not reading something because that will be also not the same. I hope that she will explain her research. But I think because I'm also interested in the sociology view of crime.
Very good. Well, bring all these questions if you want. Do you want to fast forward, or are you happy with the speed? And Shafi'i says, for example, okay, if you do it deliberately, there's qisas. If the one who is not, and the young one also gives them half the diya. And Malik says, well, it's of course it's only the responsibility of the family, free versus slave. This general instruction, idra'ul hudud bil-shubuhat, how far do you want to push it? Go down just a few lines from where we stopped. Do you see the Prophet said, forgive or don't apply had if there is any doubt? Let me see. Yeah, sure. So that becomes a rule, right? If there is any doubt, there is no had. Doesn't mean there's no punishment, but you don't apply the standard punishment. Standard punishments don't apply if there is any doubt. Hudud are these ones that I said the punishment is specified. 40 for drinking, 80 for slandering, 100 for adultery, cutting the hand for theft, and so on. Yeah. So when the Hanafis say that this is a shubha, meaning there is doubt, God, peace be upon him, bottom of 480, says, waive the hudud on the basis of doubt. What does that mean? If there is any doubt, you can't apply the standard punishment. Any analogy in American law? Yeah, if there is reasonable doubt, they say. If there is reasonable doubt, you can't convict of first-degree murder. But with second degree, you can convict with some doubt. The first degree is the highest one. Usually the sentence is not less than 25. Right. What is doubt? What is reasonable doubt, you mean? No. Oh, what's the difference between first and second? So unfortunately in American law now there's a third. There's a first, second, and third. The difference between murder and manslaughter is that manslaughter in principle is similar to torts. The question of negligence. And murder, the malice element is there. Well, how much malice? If someone subjected me to a lot of pressure, stole my money, and maybe destroyed my car and all that, I'm in a very desperate situation. And all I do is just kind of push them and a train kills them. That's not going to be the same, even though there's malice. It's not going to be the same as me being a thug. If I'm a thug, if I'm a hired gun who will just go and kill people for money. So you can get, now, of course, in Europe, before you got rid of capital punishment, that was always an option. Here, it's still an option. We have 25 states that kill, and federal law still kills. So in the 25 that don't kill, this is one of them. You're not gonna die. You could end up with life. You could end up with 50 years. You could end up with multiple lives. So, right. So now the Shubha thing is less, so modern law is very well developed because we have more case law. Although reasonable doubt, I think, is ridiculous. In the United States, reasonable doubt got to a point where any doubt, because it's jurors, it's a bunch of idiots you're talking to. You heard about O.J. Simpson? Black football guy who killed his wife. Everybody thinks he killed his wife, but the jurors couldn't convict him. First-degree murder. They had some doubt because the sequence of events where he went, saw his wife, he knew she was cheating and so on. It wasn't clear that he actually did it. There was a chance that somebody else did it. So he walked out. Oh, you never heard of O.J. Simpson? So, do you know enough about German law and the dirt in German law, or you really just don't read? Okay.
I don't really know. I just
You don't read it.
newspapers when I hear someone commits a crime, and then I just reading all of it.
You avoid it, right? Yeah, this guy was a famous footballer, and the case was a big deal in the 90s. Of course, he looks uglier and older now. And he kind of looks like that. He actually went to jail for something else. See how he changed. So, yep, because she was white. And he's black was one of these cases where he benefited essentially. He also had good lawyers. So, reasonable doubt, that's what a juror decides. You know, my favorite case in German law is an incest case. You heard about Stubing, the Stubing case?
I heard about Studien, but I don't know what it is.
There's a guy who married his sister. He was from Dresden. He didn't know, well, he knew, but so the kid was freed for adoption, age 3. His dad used to beat him a lot. So they let him go. He was born actually in Leipzig in 76. But then eventually they kept moving. His sister was born after he left. Sister was born 84. So he leaves the family in 97. She doesn't exist yet, the sister. And he came back. So he was free for adoption. Now the natural parents don't have any rights now. You know that TPR, termination of parental rights. Now he has no kid, no parents. And his father died. Then his mom was dying in 2000. 2000, how old is the sister? 26 now. And he is 35. So they meet while their mom is dying. They kind of ignite a connection and she becomes dependent on him. So they keep having kids. First kid, second kid, they say, well, you know, in the federal law, applying to all 16 states, if you sleep with your aunt, I think it's 2 years. With the sister, it's 3. So you get 3 years in jail. Or is the other way around? Anyway, he got some jail time. Very good. Yeah, they kept ending up with 4. And then after the third one, he sued. He tried to argue it's not constitutional. Because if you read the Constitution, every German has the right to sexual self-determination. That means, in general, you can decide whether you're a man or a woman and who you want to sleep with. But nobody contemplated, you know, that you would want a sister or. But anyway, so is the criminal law that prohibits marrying, having sex with an aunt or a sister unconstitutional? And the Constitutional Court said no, it's not. These go together; they're reconcilable. Right? We don't need to do tarjih. Tarjih is deciding one over the other. Why? Because the Constitution doesn't really say that incest is okay. Then he went to the European Court of Human Rights and said the Germans are not allowing me to have basic human rights. And also the court went against him. So he kept losing. You know, one of the problems about the court ruling is that the law prohibits a relationship between a brother and a sister. But how about a brother and a brother who are gay? Can they have a sexual relationship? The difference, of course, there will never be pregnancy. So you can never really prove it the same way. It's the pregnancy that's militating against this. And it's still a hole in the argument. So when Shaybani says that the Zoroastrians can go that way, yeah, it's not a bad idea. You can always think about that. I'm not, of course, you can decide otherwise. You can say, no, incest is bad, even if non-Muslims do it, and they think it's okay. Of course, atheists don't think it's okay yet. But are you sure that that's not going to happen? When I'm dead and you see that pedophilia is okay, and incest is okay, remember, because maybe that will happen. I'm seeing this society is going in the permissiveness direction. So anyway, nobody knows the future. It's just, you know, كذب المنجمون ولو صدقوا. Right, so I can't. But I mean, okay, sorry, Gulistan, I just meant to say, you know, the more you read criminal law, you just begin to think differently. I could be wrong about all these things about crime. I'm actually not committed yet, as I said. I'm just really trying the idea now with a lot of passion and a lot of energy because I have to figure it out. I want to know if this is just wrong, and then, well, you know, we can't punish the society because even though society keeps failing the criminal still has to have more of a maybe on pragmatic reasons, on pragmatic grounds. It's not that we think the criminal is really responsible, but once we generalize it, it becomes unimplementable. Maybe that's an argument too. You just have to consider the arguments. Okay.
I think law in general is really like,
You'd rather not go there. Yeah.
highly sensitive and a high.
But what do you mean? Like, you know, Junaid is very proud to be a lawyer because it's lucrative, but it's also fun. You think it's just a hard area. Like, you know, you would like not to be there, or
For me, it will be a high grade responsibility, and I think I cannot distinguish the work life and my private life. So I will always have like conscious work life.
you were considering law school seriously.
No, that was.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
Actually,
but
wait,
I-
gosh, how did I confuse you? Yeah.
Yeah, but I do, Sharia is one of the.
Mm. Right. Yeah. You could be a historian, could be a teacher. Like me, I'm not taking any responsibility for anything.
But
I just feel, yeah.
I don't know, like, if I want to study, Sharia, like, which, like, what are, I guess, like, what's the plan? Like, am I going to, is that like history or is that just law? You know, it's like, I have to figure out like which
Yeah.
discipline that is.
The dominant view is historicist, of course, and it thinks this exercise that I do all the time of imagining the old rules being enlivened is very discouraged. It's always seen, first of all, as impossible and anachronistic. They say what you're doing is something that didn't fit in the old times. Okay, good morning. We know that. There's just nothing that I'm doing that's I'm going to send this back to Abu Hanifa to apply it in his time. It's for my time. It's only provocation so that I can think. But this is freeing. It frees me from the modern paradigms, which are stiff sometimes. Sometimes they're better. Sometimes they have ideas that haven't been considered before. But most of the time they're stiff, right? Because they're all liberal, they're all capitalist. I mean, even the Chinese laws that I hear from, they're basically modern liberal capitalist systems, right? I mean, they haven't kept the old flavor, maybe in certain areas. I'd like to learn Chinese law. I'd like to learn the old one.
I mean, like Chinese society, well, is sometimes it's more capital than it actually wanted to be.
Mhm.
But no, it's not something. It's always more capital.
Meaning that there's
Actually
resistance
pretends to
still
be.
from the families, right? Yeah, the people would like not to go that fast, you mean, in the modernization? Oh, they are farther than you want them to be, or than they want to be?
They want to be like communists. They want to be
Mhm.
socialists.
Yeah.
But they're still like capitalism in the society.
Mhm.
Well, it's because, like you have to, well, that's at least like what I learned from the mom. My mom was saying that you have to be callous. And then you can agree to all be communists.
I have to be rich first.
Yeah, but if you skip the capitalist part to say, oh, we're gonna be communists, it's still playing like the capitalism component. The capitalist component is still playing in society. It's not like everyone's ready for communism. It's slowly going there. But,
So, okay, what are your reflections? Let's at least register when everything's in your head now. A, do you feel like you want to read the rest on your own? Or are you basically saturated?
If I'm honest, I want to read it just to understand it, and because I realize I'm not very into this topic. Like I don't even know the basics because I really never had anything to do with it before. But I want to learn more about it because I think it would be helpful for my future research. It also said explicitly, I didn't know the German author also like he's prophesied at the University of Nürnberg.
Who? Matthias Rohr?
Matthias.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I should see him in the summer. Yeah.
Okay, I started to read this book too.
Islamic law in past and present, right?
And
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, but I realized I never had anything to do with it.
Yeah. Very good. No, it's good to look. This is a lifetime work, so we're not talking about if you read these 1,600 pages. Well, you need 4 years. You need to take your time too, because it's not just about reading; it's about thinking and reflection. You'll forget the cases once if you're just going very quickly. What makes it glued is that you work on it, right? You have to answer on your own, and there's no correct or incorrect answer. That's what's great. You can't look on the end and at the end and see the correct answers. If you're tired, we can stop. You don't have to keep going, but if you want to keep going, that's fine too.
It's just in the PDF.
Right. Yeah, this is just the 4th volume. So you'll see from the table of contents what he covers. I can send you the whole book, all 4 volumes. They're available. It's available in English and in Arabic. It's one of the one of the easiest books to look at.
yeah, I like reading these kind of things because it lays out the different opinions, and then I feel like there is like a space left for me to think which one I want to do this. But yeah, the other one is more clear.
Definitely stop thinking that the old lawyers or even the modern lawyers know what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. They're trying, of course, if you have a tradition, in a way, there's not a lot of room to think. But think about modern American law now. If it begins to change based on a new idea that, that yes, you have something of a privacy right as a woman, and it is your body when you get pregnant, but also you'd be killing a human being. So it's not that the question is new, it's just formed differently. What happens? What happens to my daughter? Because it's not just for rape or the relationships outside of marriage, even in a marriage. So, okay, what happens to you, to either of you or my daughter, if they had enough kids? She and her husband had enough kids, 2 or 3, whatever. They want to be done. And then, no, but they're still in violation of the law if the abortion didn't go smoothly before the 15 weeks. If you live in Mississippi, that's the Dobbs case.
What is the law here?
So now there's nobody will punish people for abortion, but not just that. The California Assembly actually is going to make a law making it impossible to make a law similar to Mississippi. So you're safe here. Yeah, you get abortion rights. So now what the Supreme Court is saying is not that Roe has to be canceled everywhere. Roe is wrong, they say. Roe versus Wade says that you have a constitutional right to abort a child up to the end of the 3rd trimester, at least 13 weeks, but it could be up to 26, the 2nd trimester. The Mississippi law and the Texas laws are going to say, no, it's really only 15 weeks And if there is a pulse in the fetus, yeah, it'd be a problem. Like you would basically murder. So you'll be tried. And if doctors are doing these abortion operations, they will also be tried. So everyone will want to come to conflict. Everyone will want to. These girls don't want to be tried for just practice. And you know what? Alito has 2 kids. Okay, the judge whose draft was leaked is a 72-year-old justice, one of the 9 justices. If he has 2 kids, how did they have only 2 kids? Either contraceptives or abortion. There's no other way. You can't live with a woman 40 years and have only 2 kids. So he probably at least used contraceptives. Now it's true that this decision doesn't say contraceptives are a problem. But maybe some states will think about contraceptives as also a kind of abortion. Yeah. Okay, think about what you want to do. Next time we can keep going on this, or we can read something else. I think one claim I can make is, yes, even though the old laws are sometimes they're not as developed, or you don't have all the answers that you want to ask, sometimes you get questions that are not new, that are not available in modern times, that are basically new even though they're old, because we forgot. And sometimes just the approach, the new approach, the old approach is different from what we typically see. So yeah, just think about this idea of letting the Zoroastrians have families that would absolutely not be accepted today. Or think about sodomy. That's also something you learn from reading medieval law. There are no 2 adults committing to each other having a marital relationship the way they do with gay marriage now. It just doesn't exist in the Middle Ages. It's pedophilia usually. It's a guy likes boys. Or it could be a kind of a nefarious, weird relationship. The Lut thing is interesting because the Lut thing, yeah, they raped adults, right? They got into this. It was also what happened in the ancient world. When you defeat a certain nation, one of the things they did is rape the men as a way to humiliate them. So it's not really desire necessarily. Yeah, it's not clear, right? So this is, people hesitate about this because the Quran also has this statement, "Atatuna rijala shahwatan," meaning there is desire. But is that desire just revenge, or is it actual sexual desire? What I'm saying is, if you don't read the pre-modern world, you're always imprisoned in these modern categories. And you will have to think like the rest of the people. You will have some options, but not that many.
Anyway.